Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I have very interesting updates to share about Donald Trump's coup clown. So, first up, news about America's defendant, Rudy Giuliani. He appeared virtually in a lawsuit, or for a lawsuit, I should say, brought by his former assistant, Noelle Dunphy, and he ended up pissing off the judge. So he was also thoroughly confused as to whether or not he has an attorney, which is bizarre, but, and I'm not joking about this. So an attorney named Adam Katz introduced himself as Giuliani's defense attorney, but then Giuliani said he was representing himself. So the judge questioned this, it was obviously confusing. And then Giuliani said, quote, "Can I talk to Mr. Katz about it? I am confused. You are correct, Your Honor. I am confused." So later, they settled on Katz acting as Giuliani's legal counsel, and then they discussed whether certain items should be stricken from Dunphy's complaint based on whether or not they were relevant to the case. Then the judge said that he'd allowed Giuliani to speak, but he warned him up front, don't issue personal attacks, don't launch into an extended speech. Well, as you would imagine, Giuliani couldn't help himself. He immediately started going off on Dunphy. He accused her of being, quote, "a professional plaintiff in court to extort men." And then Giuliani also said the case should be, quote, "dismissed based on injustice." And then he shouted, quote, "my reputation has been ruined." So the judge warned Giuliani, "I'm going to cut you off." And Giuliani persisted. So the judge said, okay. He told him, quote, "Mr. Giuliani, I'm muting you. You can't do this. You should probably strongly consider, not probably, you should strongly consider finding new counsel." And then the judge told him, quote, "I'm going to protect you from yourself. These are not legal arguments you're making right now. You have to follow my rules." I mean, you think somebody with Giuliani's experience would know this, but I guess not. In the end, he told Giuliani that he needed to respond to Dunphy's complaint because he still hasn't even done that. It's been years. But Giuliani did score some wins, so the judge agreed to strike the names of certain people from Dunphy's complaint, primarily famous women who Giuliani had insulted or sexualized, like Hillary Clinton, Margaret Thatcher. I know, try to figure that out. And the judge agreed to strike Giuliani's denigrating remarks about Arab and Jewish people, which is interesting considering Trump's win and Giuliani's support for him. I also have an update about Giuliani relinquishing his assets to the Georgia election workers, Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. So I shared recently that the judge overseeing this case, Judge Lewis Lyman, he ordered Giuliani to give over the keys to his $5 million plus New York apartment, also his Mercedes that once belonged to movie star Lauren Bacall, a bunch of other valuable items. So the judge gave Giuliani 7 days to do this. Well, of course, he blew right past it. So Freeman and Moss's attorney filed a document last week, and they said that they spoke to Giuliani's attorney. Giuliani's attorney said, oh, according to them, we're not ready to turn anything over. And that his attorney said that they, quote, could not even answer, or this is Moss and Freeman's attorney, I should say, said that, quote, they could not even answer basic questions about the location of the receivership property, including the co-op shares and any particular items of physical property or the amount of cash accounts subject to turnover. So Giuliani's attorney told the court a very different version of events. He said, oh no, Giuliani was totally ready to hand everything over, but their attorney didn't tell us how. They didn't give us any instructions about how to turn that over, how to get in touch with them. Well, we now know for sure Giuliani is full of shit. He's playing his typical reindeer games. Evidently, Moss and Freeman's representatives finally got access to the New York property. This was on October 31st. It was empty. Except for a few items, it was completely cleared out. So on Monday of this week, their attorney filed another letter with the court and said, quote, when the receiver's representatives were finally granted access to the New York apartment, they learned for the first time upon entering that defendant had moved virtually all of its contents out of approximately 4 weeks ago, something that neither defendant nor defendant's counsel had bothered to mention. Remember, all of Giuliani's property, all of his assets, large and small, were ordered by the court to turn over to Moss and Freeman, with a very rare exception. According to the court's order, he was supposed to hand over things like, I think it was something from Joe DiMaggio. He had, obviously his furniture, all of his assets, everything in there was pretty much supposed to go to them. And their attorney told the judge that Giuliani's legal counsel has been repeatedly ignoring their request for an inventory of everything. They wanted a list of everything that was in the apartment because they needed to figure out how much it was going to cost them and what it was going to take to get all this stuff moved. They also have been refusing to say where all of Giuliani's valuables and all of his property is located. I mean, now we kind of know why. And also that Mercedes-Benz that he was supposed to hand over, he was just caught driving it in Florida when he went to vote for Trump. So he has no intention of handing over his assets. This is going to get really interesting and probably pretty bad for him. So the judge has ordered him to appear in court in person tomorrow. They were going to do a phone consultation or hearing of some sort. He said, no, I want Giuliani here in person. So I would imagine he's going to have some choice words for him. I will definitely keep you posted on that. And then check this out. Last Thursday, when Giuliani was voting, the media went up, they tried to talk to him, and he told them, I wasn't given a chance to defend myself in court against Moss and Freeman in the defamation case. Oh my God, total and complete lie. You all know he chose to accept a judgment against himself because he didn't want to provide any evidence during the discovery phase. He flat out refused to turn anything over. And then he was like, you know what, I'll just plead guilty. I'll just say, yes, I'm liable. I defame them. He literally admitted to lying about Moss and Freeman, and he confessed in writing. So typical, right? Always the victims on the right, always with MAGA, total perpetual victims. So anyway, next up is news about Trump coup clown and attorney Kenneth Chesebro, I think it's Chesebro. Anyway, as you all know, he admitted his guilt. He accepted a plea deal in the Georgia RICO case, and he has been acting as a cooperating witness against his co-defendants. Well, last Thursday, I think it was the Thursday before, a New York appeals court ruled his New York law license should be suspended. In their opinion, they wrote, quote, having concluded that respondent has been convicted of a serious crime, we accordingly suspend respondent from the practice of law in New York on an interim basis. So it's interim because it's possible he could regain his license in the state. Basically, the court said they were going to have to wait to see how his probation goes because the Georgia prosecutor agreed that they would scrub his criminal record if he complies with the terms of his 5-year probation. So this is the second state now to suspend Chesebro. Back in March, Massachusetts, their bar had also suspended his law license. So things are going well for Trump's minions, aren't they? And by the way, this is all state stuff, guys. So to my knowledge, I don't think there's anything Trump can do about any of this, even getting back into the White House. So anyway, next up, I have news about Mr. Lumpy Pillow Man. Last week, Mike Lindell filed a RICO lawsuit against lenders who bailed him out when he had no cash. mean, this guy just doesn't want to pay his bills. So evidently, in September of last year, when Lindell was really hurting for cash because he was going through all this legal stuff, he took out a $600,000 cash advance on his merchant account service or merchant services account. So merchant services, that is like, the way you take payments from clients, from customers. That is the company that allows you like a line of credit, and they take a percentage of it and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, he took out this loan. He agreed to pay interest of $16,800 a day on that money. I mean, god awful expensive. Now Lindell is suing, and in his lawsuit, it says the agreement was, quote, usurious, unconscionable, and thus unenforceable. So Lindell's complaint mentions another lender that supposedly agreed to issue 2 real estate loans to him for 2 different properties, but he had to do the cash advance. So Lindell says that these 2 mortgages never materialized, and he's essentially asking the court now to wipe the slate clean for him and to make the cash advance just go away. He's also asking for the court to award him damages and then payments for interest and attorney's fees. So we'll see what happens with that. Over in another court, Lindell is still fighting the man he owes $5 million to. As you guys know, he held a contest back in August of 2021, 3+ years ago. He challenged the public to, quote unquote, prove Mike wrong about the election fraud he said that there was in 2020. A computer forensic expert did that. It was a 2-time Trump voter named Robert Zeidman. He proved, no, your so-called packet captures, it's nothing more than random numbers and letters. It's internet traffic. It's nothing. So arbitration judges, several courts, as I've mentioned, have ordered Lindell, you need to pay this man. You owe this man this money. He took you up on this challenge. He proved you wrong. So he's still fighting it. It's unreal. So I'll keep you posted on that. In the meantime, Lindell may have crossed the line from unethical to illegal. Now, this is something that Trump might be able to make go away. The FBI is now looking into a matter that I mentioned recently. Lindell's so-called Election Crime Bureau sent out, you might remember this, he sent out bogus surveys to election offices, and they were asking for very suspicious information like election officials' cell phone numbers, their home addresses, a bunch of voter data. Well, where they may have crossed the line, as I mentioned before, is that they misrepresented who sent these surveys. Lindell's group insinuated that this survey was somehow connected to a nonprofit group that does work for the government, for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Luckily, election offices realized like something's off here, so they notified the proper authorities. So the matter has now been referred to the FBI for investigation. What's funny is ABC News reached out to Lindell to ask about these letters. First, he said, oh, I'm not involved in the day-to-day of that group, the Elections Bureau group, so I don't know anything about that. I don't know anything about the survey. Well, then they interviewed him by phone at a later date, and then he said, quote, I want to get rid of the electronic voting machines, and you should care about it too. There's nothing wrong with the survey. So he doesn't know anything about the survey, but there's nothing wrong with it. And Lindell claims that he has, quote, plenty of lawyers that look at everything we do. Yeah, so he can't pay his bills, but he has all of these lawyers to look into these phony letters that he's sending out. So we'll see what happens with that. Like I said, unfortunately, with the FBI investigating, that is something that Trump could put his finger on the scale with. There's also news about coup clown Mike Flynn. So you guys might remember him. He worked very briefly in the Trump administration the first time. Guy's a total scumbag. He is a liar. Trump, let him off the hook after he was convicted of lying to the FBI. Pardoned him. So anyway, CNN recently obtained a video deposition of Flynn. So this was taken in relation to a defamation case I've mentioned before. It's filed by the former Dominion Voting Systems CEO or CFO, I forget. His name is Eric Coomer. So Coomer, as you all know, he was targeted by Trump's terrorists after Trump's lies about the election being rigged in 2020. So while he's under oath, Coomer's attorney asked Flynn, quote, "Have you seen any evidence that you would consider credible, Mr. Flynn, that Eric Coomer played a role in rigging the 2020 presidential election?" Flynn replied, quote, "I have not. No, I don't really know." So Flynn was also asked if he'd ever seen credible evidence of Dominion voting machines taking votes away from Trump. And Flynn said, quote, that he'd, quote, seen a lot of evidence, read a lot of reports, but then he kind of conceded, quote, credibility is in the eye of the legal system to determine. So in other words, he's full of shit, just like all the others. So there you go, guys. We've got one admitting, yeah, I lied about the 2020 election, which we all know now, they should all at least acknowledge that it was a lie. Otherwise, Trump would have lost again last night. But yeah, we'll see what happens with Giuliani, with Lindell, with all these guys. But a lot of this cannot be wiped away. So just know that a lot of this is under the purview of state investigators, state governments, state laws that were broken. So that is one good thing. Anyway, I'll let you know if I hear more. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Please like, please share and subscribe. Please donate if you can. Love you all. Take care. Talk with you soon.